Hi GracePointe, it's Daisy. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and we're so glad you joined us today. We want you to know that no matter who you are, who you love, and how you exist in this world, you are loved, affirmed, and accepted. Please enjoy the service.
So glad you're here. Like Daisy said, you are welcome, you are celebrated, you are affirmed, you are loved here. This is a safe space. We're so glad you're here. And I think we have somebody from France here. I hear, yeah. We've got an online community. It's a good day. If you're lost and lonely, go and figure out why. Take a trip to your dark side. Go on and have a good cry. 'Cause we're all lonely. Yeah, we're all lonely together. Hey. I want to see your sadness. I want to share your sin. I want to bleed your blood and I want to be let in. Don't you just Don't we all just want to be together? Come on, sing it with us. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Yeah. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. If your face is down, we'll take a look around. Do your fingers move? Do your lungs inflate? Are you tired? Are you weary of the hidden hate you've been holding? Yeah. Did you lose that love, or have you never had it and feeling love because you did a bad thing? Yeah. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Yeah. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? The only way to lose that fearful feeling, replace it with love that's healing. Yeah. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? What's heavy behind? Come on, sing it with us. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Here we go. Leave what's heavy, yeah. What's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy, what's heavy behind. Yeah. Y'all sound awesome. Awesome. We want you to take a couple of minutes and talk to your neighbor, meet somebody, greet somebody. We will be back in a couple of minutes.
Good morning, everybody. So glad you met someone new or stood there and talked to the person you came with. That also works. I tend to do that. I just want to say good morning to everybody in the room. Good morning to the online community. Love you guys. Miss you guys. I am Hunter. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm so excited to get to do the announcements today, filling in for Amanda, which are big shoes to fill. So, we have all this info. I have a lot of info for you. All of it is on the link tree if you scan the QR code. So you can get all of this in writing, look at it later. There's a buttons for the weekly announcements, for the connection card. If you sign up for the connection card, you will get our newsletter, which has even more information for you every week. So you can join us online this week for our meet and greet. It is going to be Wednesday, September 14th at 8 p.m. Central Time in lieu of our typical Reimagine Wednesday meeting. You can bring your questions and get to know our pastor, Josh Scott. So online community in particular, look out for that. But if you live in town and you want to come chat, we'll see you on Wednesday as well. We have YAM, our young adult meetup, this week, Thursday. You guys didn't woo. You always woo. Is it because I'm not Amanda? Okay, thank you. YAM. Thank you. Yes, the drums. That's for our 20 to 30-somethings. We're meeting at Disc and Cider this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. We also have Common Ground, our social group for 30 to 40-somethings, meeting today. So exciting. Yeah, the woo. You guys, they're beating you. Yeah, watch out. So we're going to meet at the Goat Sobro at 12 p.m., which is just a block down the street. And if you can't join us after church today, the next meeting is going to be Tuesday, September 27th at 6 p.m. at Hunter's Station in East Nashville. Josh recently talked about baptism as a ritual of belonging. And in baptism, we are celebrating that we already belong, that we've always belonged. If you're interested in participating in our upcoming baptism, that is next Sunday, September 18th at 1 p.m., fill out your connection card and indicate, I think you can click a little box saying you want to get baptized or you want more information, you want to talk about that. Do that ASAP so you can get baptized next week if you're interested. The same day as our baptisms, next Sunday, a week from today, we have a social event at Disc and Cider at 4 p.m. Disc and Cider is dog-friendly, has some food, has some non-alcoholic beverages. It's indoor, it's outdoor. It's a casual, fun time to come meet people. It's also going to be a big day because we got baptism, so we got Disc and Cider, we got church, so you can come hang out, meet some new pals, meet some old pals. Tiffany and the GP kids are looking for volunteers for helping out once a month on Sunday. Tiffany promises that Tiffany will do all the teaching and you just get to hang out, help with crafts, hand out snacks, read stories, and if you do so, you will receive a kid-friendly snack of your choice every Sunday. It's a pretty sweet deal. So if you want to help out with kiddos, you can sign up on the link. Our GP students, 6th through 12th graders, will be kicking off a midweek gathering this Wednesday, September 14th. So exciting for our students. If you're adult of a student and you're interested in volunteering, please email tiffany@gracepointe.net for more information.
I have one
And
announcement.
Ricky, over to you.
Thank you. For the music team, I've announced it a couple of times, but September 25th, if you are a musician here in the community at Nashville, skilled, a singer, banjo, drums, I mean, any instrument, honestly, we want you to sign up at the link. You can fill out a form or a volunteer request form and then be at the jam session September 25th. It's a Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m., I believe, is it. But we would love for you to sign up, tell us your instrument, and be there. We'd love to have you.
So fun, so fun. And finally, y'all, this is long announcements. Thanks for hanging with me. But finally, I am teaching a study that's called Her, A Feminist Approach to Scripture. It's Wow, guys, I see you. That was so fun. Okay, so it's not a Bible study, but it's also not a Bible study, so we're just calling it a study. And we're exploring 5 central tenets to a feminist approach to Scripture. It's more of like a way to read the Bible and a perspective that you can apply outside of this study. Our first meeting was this past Thursday, and it was a blast and a half. So fun. If you weren't able to be there, but you would want to watch the recording, you can sign up for the information on your QR code, and I will get you the recording. We're having 2 more sessions. One is October 6th, and the other is November 3rd. You can come online, you can come in person. It was honestly very cool, very enlightening. I learned a lot from y'all, so that was a blast. And finally, we're home stretch here, y'all. Each week, we take a moment to acknowledge that the work we do of creating a safe and affirming and transformative community is made possible by everyone's generous financial support. We can't do what we do here, and we're doing more and more all the time, as evident by the very long announcements, without your financial support. To those who already support us, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you would like to become a part of financially sustaining the work of our community, there's a few ways you can do that. You can text GracePointe to 7797. You can go to gracepointe.net/give. You can scan the QR code on the screen or on the little table in front of you, or you can Venmo us at GracePointeTN. That is all for now. See you guys later.
I would love to invite you to stand again if you are able and help us with this song.
I'm not a captive, but I'm captivated by you. Your love surrounds me, the walls that came down are the proof. Once I was lost, it's true. Now I'm just lost in you. I am held and I am free. What a beautiful mystery. I belong, I believe. I am held and I am free. I was a wanderer, now I'm just in wonder of you. I was so restless, but I found my rest in your truth. You took me as I was, traded my chains for love. I am held and I am free. What a beautiful mystery. I belong, I believe. I am held and I am free. What more could I want? What more could I need? I'm known and accepted, and I've been redeemed. What more could I want? What more could I need? The one that I love is in love with me. Once I was lost, it's true. Now I'm just lost in you. I am held and I am free. What a beautiful mystery. I belong, I believe. I am held and I am free. I am held and I am free.
you so much. You can be seated.
Hey, everybody. It is great to see you, whether you're in the room or online. We're thrilled you're here with us today. I was talking to a friend this past week, and they made the comment that there are people who are turning 21 years old today, and they were born a year after 9/11. Right? Like, is that right? Yeah, it's 21 years this year, which is just unbelievable to think about. I bet if you were around then and you were old enough to remember, you know exactly where you were and exactly what you were doing. I was late for biology. That was not out of the norm. I was often late for biology. I stopped off for the breakfast of my people, a honey bun and a Mountain Dew. And I was late arriving to class and sat down and realized people were talking about something going on. I thought, I'm failing anyway, I should go back and watch TV. And I was there the rest of the day. And even if you maybe didn't personally know anyone who lost their lives on 9/11, it radically changed the world. It changed our country. It changed the level of safety that I think most of us felt in the world. And it changed not just that day, but it's gone on and on and on. We've had war. We've been at war for like 20 years. As a result of 9/11. And when you think about the loss of life, not only that happened on 9/11, but that happened as a result of the wars after 9/11, not only American lives, but lives of other people and places, especially civilian lives that were lost. I don't know if it was Richard Rohr. I think it was Richard Rohr, but I mean, everybody quotes Richard Rohr, so I'm just going to say it was Richard Rohr. And if I made this up, I'm going to be really bummed that I gave it to him because he has plenty. But like spirituality is kind of about what you do with your pain. And I think that a hope as a people and as a country, we learn as we move forward what to do with our pain. Hope we never have pain like that again. And so know that it was 21 years ago, but there are people who still have empty chairs because of that day. People whose lives were irreparably harmed. And so today we just acknowledge the 21st anniversary of this event that changed the world, not in a positive way, obviously. And we hold space for those who are grieving today as well, even if it's just because of, well, there was the way the world was, and then there was this. And so we just acknowledge and hold that today. We're in a series called Naked Spirituality. How many of you are reading Brian McLaren's book that we're going through? A couple of you? Yeah. It's an incredible book. And what we're doing sort of in the series is we're informed by what Brian has written, but we're kind of doing our own thing, right? So I realized, I think a couple weeks ago I said, I'm not just going to read a chapter to you every week from the book. That would be a little boring. But we're in this season of simplicity. That's how the book begins, with the season of simplicity. It's the spring-like season. It's a season of awakening. It's a season where we become awake to maybe God, where we become awake to ourselves, where we become awake to the journey we're on. And if you remember when you first became awake to something, what happens is there's this sense of enthusiasm, there's this energy. And so last week we talked about one of the words for this season is the word here. And if you joined us online last week, we were online only, we talked about what it means to be here and sort of the way the past pulls at us and then the way the future pulls us forward, but there's something about here that the future doesn't become unless we do here. And if we stay too far in the past, we can't be here. And this week we're going to continue by talking about the word thanks. I think that's a word we probably use all the time. How many of you use the word thanks like a bajillion times a day? Right? Like somebody, you're sitting down at a restaurant, they bring you a glass of water, what do you say? Thanks. Somebody holds the door open for you, what do you say? Somebody pulls you over and gives you a speeding ticket. What do you say? No. Okay. So there are clear moments where the word is not applicable. But it's something I realize how much time we spend with our kids talking about politeness, right? And I think thanks is one of those words that for many of us is just, it's the polite thing to say. Like if somebody brings you something, they give you something, even if it was a little late, you don't go, it's about time. You say thanks. Well, maybe you do. People don't like that. They would prefer you just say thanks. And we focus with our kids. When they order something at a restaurant, we say please. And when they bring it, you say thanks. And when somebody does something kind for you, you say thanks. If somebody gives you a Christmas gift and you already have it, you don't go, I've got 2 of these now. You say thanks. And I think in some ways that's great, right? I think teaching our kids to be polite is a good thing. But there's in some ways that when you use a word over and over and over again without thinking about it, Dallas Willard said familiarity breeds unfamiliarity. There's this idea that you use it all the time and somehow it loses its oomph, right? It loses its power. And so today I want to talk about what does it mean to be a person of thanks, a person, maybe you can say gratitude as well. And I want to look at a passage from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Now, the Bible nerd in me just needs to tell you this, that 1 Thessalonians is probably the oldest document in the New Testament. So I know it starts with the book of Matthew, but Matthew wasn't even the oldest gospel. Mark is probably the first gospel, then Matthew, then maybe Luke or John. You could convince me either one depending on the day of the week, right? But Paul's letters, his authentic letters, there are 7 of them, were written before the Gospels. So the closest thing we have to the time of Jesus and the life of Jesus are Paul's writings. And 1 Thessalonians, most people think, was his first letter that we actually have. And so just a caution when you're reading Paul's letter, 1 Thessalonians. Do you imagine that Paul changed his mind at all as he grew and learned? You're all evangelical, aren't you? Because you're like, yes, he for sure did, right? We were sort of, many of us were taught, no, that like sort of it all fell out of the sky whole cloth. And so that's not the case. Paul, if you read his letters, the 7 genuine letters, what you'll see is Paul changing his mind. You'll see, because what he's actually doing is not writing systematic theology. What he's actually doing is building the plane as he flies it. And he's trying to respond to the needs and the difficulties. He doesn't write these letters generally just to say, hey, it's all going great, awesome. He writes these letters to say, what are you doing? How are you, what? Stop it, right? That's sort of the spirit of the letters. He's dealing and addressing with problems that are cropping up in communities that are radically inclusive. And they're trying to figure out how we bring all of our diversity and all of our complexity into a community where we're all really different, but we feel brought together around some central values and some things. So we share a vision of the way we want the world to be, and we're trying to figure out how we do that in community with each other. That's what Paul's doing. And here's what he says. He's winding down, often when he's winding down the letter, he's landing the plane, he's sort of giving some, what I imagine is like, okay, I want to make sure I tell him this sounds good, this sounds good. And so here's what he says in chapter 5, verse 14. Siblings, we urge you to warn those who are disorderly, comfort the discouraged, help the weak, be patient with everyone. I mean, there's some of that I love. Help the weak, right? Comfort the discouraged, be patient with everyone. That one's harder. Make sure no one repays a wrong with a wrong, but always pursue the good for each other and everyone else. Rejoice always. Pray continually. Give thanks in every situation because this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. That's quite the trio, isn't it? Rejoice always. How many of you got that down? Pray continually. Not even sure what prayer is, Paul. I'm a little confused about what we're doing. Give thanks in every situation. Have you ever been in a situation where giving thanks not only felt difficult, but it would have felt inauthentic? So what is he getting at? It actually, depending on the situation, asking someone to give thanks could actually be harmful. Or asking somebody who's suffering, asking somebody who's been harmed, asking somebody who's going through trauma. When you think about what this day is, 9/11, is that a thing we want to give thanks in the middle of? And what does that even look like? And so what I'd like to do, I want to just spend a few moments talking about what thanks isn't. And then maybe reflect on if we take those things off the table, what thanks could be, what it might mean to put this word into our vocabulary and into our ways of being in the world, into our ways of thinking. So let's begin with this. Thanks isn't that thing that happens where you feel guilted and ashamed because you're not thankful. Right? Does that ever happen to anybody? When you're talking about your life in some way and somebody goes, well, I just think you should be thankful. Look at all you have. How could you look at all you have and look at all these other people don't have all you have? How could you possibly not be thankful? And it may be true that you have a lot going for you. And it may be true that you've been really fortunate. It may be true that you've inherited quite a bit of privilege. The reality is, in that moment, what you don't need is guilt and shame. Because I have come to believe that guilt and shame are the things that continually drive us away from human flourishing. You remember the story at the beginning of the Bible where the first humans eat the fruit they're not supposed to eat, and they're immediately ashamed and they hide? People often talk about this whole idea of, well, they sinned, and because God can't be around sin, they had to hide from God. The reality is, if you keep reading, God shows up anyway. God shows up for their evening stroll anyway. And what God does is God immediately moves to cover their shame, because shame is the thing that sends them into hiding. And the reality is, the good news is you have never been separated from God. That's really good news, right? You cannot be separated from God. But what shame does is shame creates the experience of separation. We might use the word estrangement. Shame makes us feel separated from God. And actually, shame makes us feel separated from ourselves. And so no matter what, yeah, maybe you should be more thankful about some things in your life, but the reality is shame will never get you there. Shame will never allow you to step into the light. Shame will always keep you in the darkness, because that's what shame is designed to do. So thanks isn't guilt and shame. Thanks isn't toxic positivity. You seen the meme that goes around where the guy's sitting in the room, I think it's a dog, and the whole room's on fire, and he's like, this is fine. Do you ever feel like that? Like living in America, watching the news, nuclear secrets. You're going, this is fine. We're fine. We're all fine. There's this toxic positivity, and it has been so deeply ingrained in the American Christian experience, right? Where everything just is fine. And if I pretend it's fine, and if I believe it's fine, then maybe it's just going to be fine. This toxic positivity that causes you to ignore maybe some things that you can actually be doing in the world to alleviate some problems. But no, if there's a problem, then there's something wrong, because every day is supposed to be a Friday. Because I'm supposed to rejoice always. Paul said so. There are moments in your life when joy will feel like it's the farthest thing from you. That's okay. There will be moments when something terrible happens. There will be moments when your roof starts leaking and you get a flat tire and the microwave goes out. And it's okay not to think, this is fine. And I had one of these small moments yesterday. I put something in the microwave and I shut it. I didn't slam it. I shut it. And this little thing from the bottom of the microwave, it's like a vent cover thing, technical term, fell out. I was like, oh, I can put that back in. And then I dropped it behind the stove. And so then I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull the stove out a little bit. And I look behind and I can see it. And I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll get a broom. And I'll stick the broom down there and I'll slowly lift it up. Well, when I got the broom in there, I knocked out the other one. There were two. And it went behind the stove. And we used grown-up words. And so finally I got them out, but then I couldn't get the stove back in for a bit. And I finally got it all done. I swept up and I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm talking about giving thanks. I'm telling you, in that small, that's a micro, not even a problem, right? But this idea that if you're not feeling good and giving thanks, and if everything doesn't feel up and to the right all the time, and if you can't always say, this is the day the Lord has made, let us rejoice. Does that annoy you like it does me when people say that? Like, yes, it's the day the Lord has made. but we haven't had coffee yet. So we'll rejoice in our own good time. But it's okay if you don't feel that way. There's toxic positivity that actually acts as a mask to keep us from what's actually going on in the world. And I think part of the human experience and part of being a healthy human being is not like hiding from those things, but it's being able in a healthy way with friends and family and therapy, all those things, being able to actually look at what's actually going on in the world. Thanks isn't denying how our experiences make us feel. Anybody else told most of your life that you couldn't trust your feelings? By the way, that's why it is so easy in some of the spaces we came out of. It's so easy to have cultures of abuse. Because when you're constantly telling people, don't trust your feelings, then all sorts of things, red flags, all sorts of pain, all sorts of things can be minimized and swept under the rug when you don't trust your feelings. You have feelings for a reason. If you feel unsafe, that's okay. That's a feeling you need to pay attention to, right? And so there's this idea that if we're going to be thankful, then we can't actually look at the reality of our situations. We can't actually look at what's going on in our lives. We have to somehow pretend that we don't feel what we feel. I can remember being in college, and my parents would come to visit, and I hadn't done laundry in 3 months. And I would try to, I'm going to just throw it all in this closet, and they'll never see it. And then I'd forget and open the closet, and inside of there was like a stack of laundry. It didn't go away your feelings won't go away. And so in part, whatever thanks might be, it isn't pretending that you don't feel. It isn't ignoring your heartbreak, your pain. It isn't ignoring suffering. It isn't ignoring what you've actually been through. And thanks isn't comparison-based, right? Like sort of what we talked about with the guilt and shame piece. Well, you have so much more than this, so you should feel a certain way, right? Comparison never leads us to thanks, does it? Comparing our lives to the life of somebody else. And what I've found in the world is that there are often, when you look at somebody who's like a major celebrity, right? And everybody thinks they're great and they're making millions of dollars and it's just all wonderful. You know that's not actually true, right? Can you imagine people caring about everything? Now, I know that we have social media and I'm like, everybody wants to know what I had for breakfast. But can you really imagine everybody caring about what you had for breakfast? Everybody caring about every decision you make in your life? So there's this comparison trap we get into. We want to compare our lives, and based on how we feel about everybody else's life, we'll decide how we feel about our life. Comparison always leads us down an unfulfilling road. Because there'll always be somebody who has it better than you, probably. There's always going to be people who you have it better than. And if you're caught in the middle of trying to measure your life against other people's lives, all you're going to do is feel shame or I'm just not enough. I'm just not enough. Look at all the other people my age. They've done this, and I haven't done that. Look at all the other people who started out when I started out. They've done all of these things, and I haven't even come close. And the truth is, none of those other people are on your path. None of those other people are the unique set of molecules and nerves and synapses and cells that you are. You are a unique being existing in the universe. Your life won't look like other people's lives, and it's not supposed to. I mean, this idea that we should all dress the same, be the same, have the same haircut, what kind of world ultimately would that lead to? It's just super bland and boring. And when we are measuring our lives and existences around other people's, it's impossible to then look at what we've been given and look at our life and our singular existence and say, thanks. Well, I would say thanks, but they got a new car. I would say thanks, but they're living the life I thought I should be living. I would say thanks, but. And so I don't think thanks is bound up in how you measure up, how I measure up against our neighbors. I don't think thanks is bound up in how we measure up against people who we think and imagine that they have the life we want to live. So what is thanks? If we lean into, okay, it's none of those things. What could thanks be? And I think it begins with, thanks is about awareness, or what we called last week, here-ness. Right? It is really impossible to engage thanks when you are in the past or in the future. It just is. Because none of the things that you're dealing with in front of you are either one of those. Because the past is about what happened, and it's full of all sorts of nostalgia, maybe some regret, and all of those things. And the future is so unknown and uncertain. Thanks is about having your feet planted here. And it's about an awareness that I might not have existed. Do you ever think about that? You really want to trip out? Think about this. You may never have existed. Now, just imagine, like, you exist. You are in the world. And as complex and difficult as being in this world can be, you're here. And it's an awareness of, gosh, I actually exist, and existence is a good and beautiful thing. I think thanks begins when we can put our feet in the moment and begin to go, look, if I have nothing else to be uttering this word because of, here's one. I exist and I'm breathing and I'm here in this moment. And I also think thanks is kind of grounded in a kind of contentment. Anybody else struggle with contentment? And then when I'm thinking a couple weeks ago, there's nothing wrong with my iPhone. It's fine. It's not the newest one, but it's fine. It works. It's cracked. It's fine. I don't need a new. And then they unveil like the 14, and its camera is like the greatest camera invented in human history. And suddenly I'm going, my phone's really not fine. I think it's running a little slow, and it is cracked. I mean, I can't be carrying a cracked phone around in my pocket all the time. And suddenly there's this thing that begins to shift. Contentment is hard. Contentment is hard. And I think because we struggle with, like, if I'm content, does that mean I don't have aspirations for anything? If I'm content, does that mean I can't want something if I'm content? And I think contentment, what I'm coming to understand is contentment doesn't mean that you don't want something. It doesn't mean you think, gosh, I would like to have, or I would like to do, or I'd like to become, or contentment doesn't mean any of things. I think what contentment means is, regardless of how any of that plays out, my identity is not rooted in any of them. Right? So if I get the thing, if I get the promotion, if I do the thing, if I become the skydiving champion, whatever your thing is, your identity is actually not bound up in any of that. That you have an understanding of who you are that is outside of how much money you make or how popular or how successful or whatever. You have this sense of who you are, that your value and worth are not determined by any of those other things. Which is why often in religious spaces we actually try to move people away from contentment, because if they begin to understand that who they are is enough, then in certain contexts, what are we even giving them? Often religion is propped up by this sense of telling you you're lacking something. You're lacking worth. You're lacking belonging. And we here at the institution can help you get it. For $29.95, 3 easy payments, we'll give you belonging. When in reality, belonging is already yours. Worth is already yours. And when you begin to live from that place, then thanks is different, isn't it? It's not, wow, I'm so thankful for all the stuff I have. And it's great to be thankful for your stuff, sure, whatever. But thanks then is rooted more in your being. I'm grateful that I am learning who I am, and I'm learning my place in the family of things, the way Mary Oliver put it. And that place and that belonging is not tied to anything other than the fact that I exist, and I am breathing, and I am loved, and I'm beloved, and I belong. That, when Paul says be thankful in every situation, what if that's what he's getting at? I mean, again, you have Paul, like if you read the rest of Paul, I don't know, people are really, really mad at Paul. Well, I'm mad at the fake Paul who wrote some of those other letters. That person wrote some bad stuff. And I think I'm going to encourage us to be maybe a little kinder to the actual Paul. Here's why. He's building the plane as he flies. He's literally writing to a community he's saying, hand me the duct tape. Put it on there, right? He's doing that. And I think we've made a mistake. We've read Jesus through Paul instead of reading Paul through Jesus. And I don't think Paul was doing something different than Jesus was doing. I think we've read Paul in a way that makes it look like he was doing something. That's Bible nerdery for free. But I think maybe that's what Paul was getting at. Because this guy, if you read his letters, I mean, he talks about, I've been beaten up, been arrested more times than I can count, I was shipwrecked, people are out to get me. He would ultimately meet his death at the hands of the Roman Empire. And he talks about, there's this great line in one of the Corinthian letters where he says, we have nothing, and yet we possess everything. Isn't that a great line? We have nothing, and we have everything. I can't imagine that same person is writing to the Thessalonians and saying, look, be thankful in every situation. Just when everything's going bad, just be thankful for your car and be thankful for your dog and be thankful for your refrigerator. I don't think that's what he's getting at. I think what he's saying is beneath all the things that can shift and change, beneath all the things that can go away, beneath all of that, there is a you that exists that is enough. So be thankful for that. Get in touch with the you that is underneath it all. And allow gratitude to spring forth because you know that you don't have to run around measuring up based on other people. You don't have to run around measuring up for God. That's not how this whole thing works. You get to wake up and be, and it's enough. I think thanks is about generosity too. And I'll just say this, I've never seen somebody who was really stingy with everything, who was also a person who at the core of their identity was a person of gratitude. Is that fair? I've never seen a person who was so miserly with everything, their money, grace, their kindness toward other people. I've never met a person like that who at the end of the day goes, I just feel a real sense of thankfulness in my being. Because there are a couple ways to show up in the world. You can show up in the world believing there's only so much to go around, and so if somebody gets something I don't, then it's bad. Y'all been on Facebook since student loan thing happened? It's that. Politics of it aside, if something good happens for somebody else and you're just like, well, it didn't happen for me, so I hate it. Probably not a person who wakes up in the morning going, just to be is a gift. I mean, fair. But you meet a person who realizes that just to be is a gift. And they approach things in a way, way, way more open-handed, generous way. So that they can see something good happen for somebody else and they go, oh, so glad that happened for them. My experience was different. I'm glad they didn't have to have my experience. Like, I think about this because I remember hearing as a kid, well, when I was a kid, we walked to school uphill both ways in snow. Can we just be glad we're not doing that anymore? Do we have to beat people up with the fact that we invented transportation since you went to school? Like, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay for good things to happen to other people. And I think people who have rooted themselves in this sort of gratitude are able to look at the world and not feel like somebody else's good fortune, #blessing, whatever, it isn't a threat to their well-being. You can look around and say, gosh, I'm so glad that happened for them. I'm so glad that happened for them. And I'm so glad that I have been as fortunate as I've been too. I think generosity comes from that. And I think in some ways the only way you get to that is through practice. I think ultimately thanks is a practice. Right? I think it's pretty natural for human beings to look around at what other people have and to be mad and frustrated they got something you didn't. I think that there's this whole theological theory about this called mimetic theory, and it's this idea that we want to imitate. Kids do this, right? So when one of my kids has something, guess what all the other ones suddenly want? None of them had it before. It was a toy laying in the middle of the floor. One of them picks it up, and suddenly it's a UFC fight that breaks out at my house. Because everybody wants the thing one person has. That's kind of wired into us. I think it's evolutionary. Right? I don't think it's because somebody got naked and ate some fruit. I think it's evolutionary. I'm glad that was funny. I'm serious. I don't think that's why it is. I think it's explaining that there were some things that when our species was evolving, they were strengths for us and allowed us to make it. But those things that were once strengths for us to allow us to survive are now becoming things that threaten our shared existence. Because when somebody has something you want and you have a nuclear bomb, it's a little different than two people with sticks. And so I think there's this thing in us that's natural that hopefully, I don't think it will just go away on its own. I think we have to work on it. But I think there's this practice to thanks. And I don't mean in the toxic positivity way, like everything's fine, thank the Lord. I don't mean that. I don't mean waking up every day and listing all the things in your life you're thankful for. Have you ever done that? Because I've been told to do that before. You ever done that and just got more mad about stuff you didn't have? It's like, I'm so thankful for this, but I don't have that. That's a little counterproductive. I'm saying the practice of centering yourself in your being, of being at home in your body, and realizing that existence is good. And that for all the things that are swirling about, at the core of who you are, you're enough. Meister Eckhart, Christian mystic, said if the only prayer you ever said in your life was thanks, that would suffice. And I would add, maybe that prayer is actually a practice. Maybe it's waking up every day and reminding yourself that who I am is good, who I am is enough, that I don't have to go out today and do the work of measuring myself against everybody else. I don't have to go out today and find my identity in the core of who I am based on how everything is going around me for everybody else. I think it's a practice. I think it's a reminder. One of the very first times I went to therapy, one of the things we talked about was telling yourself the truth. That you'll be in moments and you're going to feel like there's a million things you're going to be thinking about that just aren't true. So every time I try to do something with home improvement, I break something and I bleed. Every time. It's a Scott family tradition. Literally the other day, my oldest did something and he started bleeding. I was like, yeah, welcome. That's who you are now. That's our family. But every time I do, I feel my most insecure like walking into Lowe's. Because I know that they know, somehow they know. You know, I've even thought about dressing up to go in there, like with a hard hat and a belt on with tools in it, just to play the part, because I think they sense it. And then I go home and try to fix something, and it goes terribly, and it's just not how my brain works, and I get mad, and I end up telling myself things about myself, like, you're just really, like, you do things with words, other people build stuff. Like, if it weren't for other people, the buildings you sit in to read words, not existing. And there's this thing, I get in this loop in my head about you're just really kind of useless in any practical way. And that may be true. But that's actually not who I am. I'm saying this publicly so I can watch it back the next time I try to do home improvement. But you know what I mean? We'll live with this sense of, well, I'm a screw up. I always screw up. That's what I do. Hi, I'm a screw up. I always make a bad decision. That's who I am. I'm a bad decision maker. I always fumble. That's what I do. I just fumble everything. People put confidence in me, and I just blow it every time. No, that's not who you are. Maybe it's as simple as reminding yourself, yeah, I messed that up. They're going to write books about how I messed that thing up. So I did that well. That's not who I am. I'm not a screw-up. I'm a human being. And to be human is to be this beautiful mixture of divinity and transcendence and dirt. That's such a powerful image when the Genesis 2 creation story. There are two creation stories in the book of Genesis. One is sort of God speaking things into existence, and this other is way more intimate. It's God digging down into the dirt and forming a human being out of the dirt and then breathing into that human being, and it becomes a living existence. You and I think such a beautiful metaphor. We are divine breath and dirt. The name Adam in Hebrew actually means like dirt guy. You're all dirt bags. You just don't know it. That's the message of Genesis. That's who we are. So you're going to mess up. You're going to drop the ball. You're going to make bad decisions at times. And yet none of those things can define your existence. Because the same God who in Genesis forms it all and says it's good is the same God who says the same thing about you. You are good. You are beloved. You're enough. You aren't your achievements. You aren't your accomplishments. And when you let that inside, then you can begin to say things like Paul says in 1 Thessalonians. Be thankful in every circumstance. Realize that you have nothing, but you possess everything. That maybe it doesn't measure up with what everybody else says you should be and have and do. But at the core of who you are, there is an understanding of who you are. And you live from it, and you're shaped by it. And you know that you're enough. Are you with me? I think that's where thanks begins. I think that's where thanks starts. Let's pray. God, there are moments when the word thanks is so far from us. And yet, even in those moments, we live from this ground of being, knowing that we're loved and embraced. Remove us as best we can from this guilt and shame cycle, from this way of seeing the world that continually measures our existence by the existence of other people. May we begin to have the ability to trust that who we are is enough. That who we are belongs. And may we live from the ground of that being. May we share Paul's words that there are moments when it feels like we have nothing, and yet we possess everything. We're grateful. And everybody said, amen.
So we're gonna finish with a new song, and this is a song that I actually wrote after many conversations with Josh. I think that one thing that's really helpful in being thankful and being grateful is accepting there are things you're not going to understand, and sometimes that's the best thing you can do, and you surrender to something like that. And Josh and I have talked about wondering how to even talk about God in the seasons of life that we're in. And I'm sure there's a lot of folks here this morning who are here because maybe you've lost all your words for understanding how to talk about God. And we found this metaphor we really liked, and it's what I wrote the song about. If you've seen the movie The Truman Show, it's about this character Truman who lives in this town that he doesn't know is set up and revolves around him, and it's like a television show, and he's the only one who's not in on it. You should go watch it sometime. It's really good. But the point is, there's this story in that story that I think is really beautiful. It's what this song is about. And it's where he sees this woman near the beginning of the movie. He sees this person who was not supposed to, he wasn't supposed to see. And she kind of breaks in to the set and to the moment to his life, and then she gets taken out. And for the rest of his life, he's trying to remember this woman's face. And what he does is he goes to the grocery store and he buys these fashion magazines, and he tells the checkout people that they're for his wife or whatever back home. But then he takes them back and he goes into his basement and he flips through all the faces and the pages and he snips and cuts out eyes and noses and chins and foreheads and he brings out this giant book. It's this thick, and he opens it, and there's this giant thick image with these layers and layers and layers of all these parts of faces, and it's like he's trying to reconstruct her face. And every time he adds something, it looks maybe a little more like what he remembers. And the thing that's hard for us to remember sometime, or the thing that I know is tricky for Josh and his role here, is that we're not supposed to have an actual picture, an actual photograph of God. Sometimes the best we can do is to layer things on top of each other, squint our eyes at it, and say, I think, it's our stories on top of each other. And I think what do you think? Does that look like anything? Does that look like something? I think that's closer, and maybe that's what it is. And to hold that mystery together, I think, does stir gratefulness, thankfulness. So anyways, so here's a brand new song. And it's called You're Like the Sun. Maybe some things aren't meant to be known. The secret of life just inside a black hole. You can't know. That's the point of it. I've been looking for eternity in every wrong place. Literal lines around the gods we named. Pull the thread, tell me what is left. Lights on string, stories in your head. And like the sun, if you stare long enough, you can't see it. Oh, like the sun, if you stare hard enough, you can't see it. Oh. Layers and layers, layers and layers of half-truth, adding up to something beyond you. Like a dream, like a lover's kiss. Oh, you know it's real, but you can't remember it. 'Cause like the sun, if you stare hard enough, you can't see it. Oh, like the sun, if you stare long enough, you can't see it. So we tell our story all together now, written like a ransom letter, while we cut up our stories for the words. Oh, you know, despite how tight this space is, we combine and mix our faces to tell a tale like we have never heard. Singing like the sun. You are like the sun. You are like the sun. Oh. You are like the sun. You are like the Thank you.
Friends, thanks for being here today. We're so glad you guys are part of this community in person and online. If you're here in the room and could spare a few minutes when we're done to help put the tables and chairs back together, we would really appreciate it. Your benediction today, our benediction today, comes from Mary Oliver, who gives me a lot of reasons to say thanks. This poem is called Don't Hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant that love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy was not made to be a crumb. We love you and we are proud of you. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Have a good week. We'll see you. Leave what's heavy, what you.